So what I want to talk about is how toxins in the environment really affect us and our weight. So it's not just calories in and calories out, because if that's all that was to it, it would be easy. We would just eat less and we would lose weight. But your hormones affect whether your body chooses to store fat or burn fat. And so a lot of times there's a hormone problem, which is causing our bodies to want to gain more weight, even if we're not doing such a bad job with our diet and exercise. But if we've worked really hard to get your hormones imbalanced, and yet you're still tending to gain more weight, a lot of times the problem is the toxins in our environment. And how we feel it is that it's our fault for eating a treat now and then, or not being perfect with our diet, or not getting enough exercise. But it really may not be your fault. It really may be the result of this environment that we live in. So I want to talk about some of the chemicals that we're all exposed to on a regular basis and how they affect us, and specifically how they affect our weight. And then talk about some of the things that you can do to avoid these things. And the first one that I want to talk about is BPA, bisphenol A. So bisphenol A is something that's found in plastics. It especially is found in plastic water bottles, like not the disposable ones, but the reusable ones. It is found in the lining inside aluminum cans. It is found in the sealants that we put in our children's teeth. And bisphenol A is a xenoestrogen, which means it acts like estrogen in your body, but also it is an obesogen, which means that it causes us to gain weight. It creates obesity. We have studies that show that if babies are exposed to BPA when they're in the womb, that those children will go on to be more overweight, regardless of what they're eating and how much exercise they're doing when they're older. And it does this by changing cells in the pancreas and the liver and promoting more problems with insulin. And of course, insulin is our fat-storing hormone. So one study looked at almost 1,500 Americans' BPA levels, and we all have BPA in our body. So looked at our BPA levels and found that the higher our BPA level, the greater the chance of us having heart disease and diabetes. And in fact, if the people with the highest BPA levels had twice the risk of diabetes and heart disease. Another study that was done at West Virginia University found higher levels of BPA in the urine samples meant that that person had a greater risk for type 2 diabetes. And it didn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. It didn't matter how old you were, what race you were, what your starting body weight was. The more BPA, the greater the link between type 2 diabetes, meaning that it is a direct cause. It's not just that it's making you gain weight and that causes the diabetes. It itself is causing problems with diabetes. And of course, type 2 diabetes is a problem with insulin. Your body has to make more and more insulin to try to regulate your blood sugar, and insulin is the fat-storing hormone, so you can see where this is going. A study done in Nature, or published in the journal Nature, it was done at Harvard and Brown universities. They looked at 1,000 women over a 10-year period of time. And the women with the highest levels of BPA gained the most weight over that 10-year period. So again, lots and lots of research showing us how it is associated with weight gain. So we're trying really hard to understand how it does this and why it does this. And we've found that besides interfering with your pancreas, so that causes problems with insulin, it also changes our fat cells. So it creates more fat cells and it creates bigger fat cells. So the more fat cells and the bigger they are, the more fat they can store, which is promoting the obesity. So a study looked at it the other way around. They took women and for a 3-week period of time, they had them go completely BPA free. So they looked at their foods, they looked at their cosmetics, they looked at other packaging, they did everything possible to get the BPA away from them for a 3-week period of time. And maybe not surprisingly, their levels of BPA dropped over that 3 weeks, but also they lost weight. They didn't change their diet, they just got BPA out of their system. So when the BPA is causing fat cells to get bigger and it's causing you to grow more fat cells, that effect is exaggerated. It's even worse when you have more insulin in your system. So on the one hand, it's making more fat cells and making them bigger, but on the other hand, it's also working on your pancreas to interfere with your pancreas and cause more insulin. So they just affect each other, right? Because when you gain more weight, that tends to cause more problems with insulin, and then you gain more weight, and all of this just keeps spiraling out of control. And then here you are munching on celery, you're walking around the block, you're trying to do everything that you can do, but this BPA in your system is really working against you. There was a study that looked at mice, because of course we can't do these studies in humans, right? It's not like we can take a bunch of moms and give them a whole bunch of exposure to BPA and then look what happens to their babies. Or we can't take you and expose you to more BPA and see if you gain more weight. But they did a study on mice, and they gave the mom about as much BPA as what they would expect us to get in our typical life. So not a big dose, just a typical low dose that we're all exposed to on a regular basis. And what they found is that when the babies were born, even though the babies were fed the exact same amount of calories and they had the exact same amount of physical intake, those babies were 15% more overweight, or they weighed 15% more than the babies from the moms that did not get the BPA. So BPA is something that we are all exposed to on a regular basis. If we can test your levels for BPA, if you'd really like your BPA level tested, you can ask us. It's not covered by insurance, but we can do it. And more BPA in your system promotes more weight gain, and it just makes it so much harder for you to fight that. So some of the things that you can do is avoid using plastic. So if you have plastic water bottles, we want you to drink lots of water. Please drink your water. But you can actually get glass bottles now. So here's mine. So it's glass, but then they put the rubbery stuff around it, so when I drop it, it doesn't smash to pieces. But you can get glass bottles in your kitchen. Take, all your plastic Tupperware containers, swap them out for glass ones. Also, the receipts that you get from your credit card, those credit card receipts, how they're kind of shiny on one side, and that shiny is from a coating of BPA. So try not to touch the credit card receipts. You touch them as little as you can, and maybe if they have the option to just email you the receipt sometimes, maybe do that instead of taking the paper copy. So BPA is an issue. Do your best. Can't avoid it at all times, but it is definitely a problem. The next chemical is also in plastic. And one more thing I want to say about BPA. Now you'll find a lot of things that are BPA free. The problem is they are taking out the BPA because they know that consumers are concerned about it, and they're creating new, like BPA-B and different kinds that have never been tested. So we have no idea whether they're safer. And chances are probably they're not that different than the original, so they probably aren't safer. Maybe they're 10 times more dangerous. Nobody knows. And it will take years and years before we figure it out, because it's not like they can take humans and give them a bunch of this new form of BPA or BPB or whatever they're using to see if it causes problems, because that would be totally unethical. So just do your best to switch from plastic to glass, and then you don't have to worry about it. And be careful with canned food. In researching what I was going to talk about today, I learned something new. I learned that canned tuna is one of the highest sources of BPA. So, if you open a can of tuna and dump out the tuna and then rub your finger around the inside of the can, you can feel that rubbery coating in there, and that rubbery coating is the BPA. So tuna is high in mercury, so it's something that we recommend eating very sparingly. But if you are going to eat tuna occasionally, if you buy it in the packets instead of the can, at least there's a little bit less BPA. Okay, so the next chemical is called phthalates, and it's spelled PHTHALATES. It's the one you don't want to get on a spelling bee, phthalates, that starts with a P. But you don't have to know how to spell it. Phthalates are found in thin plastic that we use in those throwaway plastic bottles, when you go and just buy a bottle of water. But it's also in a lot of the thin plasticky bottles that we buy our food in. It is in plastic wrap, like saran wrap that you cover your food with. It's in a lot of soft plastics, like it was in the plastic of nipples for baby bottles. And now there's laws getting those things out, but the baby bottles were made with BPA, and the nipple was made with phthalates, and here we're feeding, right? You as a baby were getting these things in your body if you were fed with a bottle. So phthalates are in the soft, flexible kind of plastic. And phthalates also increase weight gain. They interfere with our metabolism. So in this particular study, they took mice, because we can't do this on humans, and they exposed them just to low amounts of phthalates, which is about how much we would be expected to get on a regular basis. And they gained a substantial amount of weight. They had more fat in their bloodstream. It interfered with their blood sugar metabolism, that's the insulin, and it changed some of the cell receptors that were really important for metabolism. So this is another kind of plastic that you really want to avoid. But specifically, the plastic, this phthalates will leach out of the plastic more if it is heated or cooled. So if you take your plastic water bottle and put it in the freezer, it's going to pull more phthalates out. Or if you put it in the microwave, it'll pull more phthalates out. So you should never microwave with saran wrap over your food, because that really leaches the plastic out. And when you put the saran wrap in, it gets all soft and the steam goes up from your food and clings and then drips back down. Please don't ever do that. Cover it with a plate or paper towel or something else. So the other thing that pulls the phthalates and the BPA out of the plastic are things that are acidic or things that are alkaline. So sodas are very, very acidic. So if you were to buy a bottle of, a Coke or something like that, a glass bottle of Coke wouldn't do this, but a plastic bottle of Coke, the acidity in the Coke is leaching the chemicals into the beverage. So please don't drink soft drinks anyway, but specifically that leaches. Another one is vinegar. So even apple cider vinegar is healthy. We like apple cider vinegar, but if you buy it in a plastic bottle, it's acid and it pulls the chemicals out of the plastic. So look at your things that you have in your home. Look at your vinegar, look at your apple cider vinegar, your condiments. And when things are in plastic, just know anything that's in plastic that's got vinegar in it really would be better to choose one in a glass container if you're able to find it. So that's phthalates. Plastics in general have a lot of chemicals in them. There are lots of other ones that have long chemical names that you want to avoid. But a quick way of sort of at a glance knowing whether the plastic is better or worse is looking at the numbers. They have those recyclable numbers on the bottle of the plastic, right? You can look at the label, it's got the triangle. So the ones that you want to avoid is plastic number 3, which is polystyrene, which has like styrofoam. So normally we think of that in those styrofoam food things, we get for takeout, or egg cartons that are styrofoam, or the peanuts in packaging. So those kinds of styrofoam, polystyrene are things that are endocrine disruptors. We really don't want to use those. I'm telling you the wrong thing. That's number 6. Not number 3. This is number 6, polystyrene or styrofoam. So definitely we want to avoid it, specifically when it's heated. So if you get some styrofoam foam container to get your food from the takeout restaurant, do not put it in your microwave when you heat up your food. At a bare minimum, put it on a plate, put the plate in the microwave. And one of the really big problems with this too is it takes hundreds and hundreds of years for this stuff to decompose. So avoid number 6, but you do want to avoid number 3. And number 3 is polyvinyl chloride, or PVC. So it's used in food wrap, in bottles for cooking oil, shower curtains, inflatable mattresses. It's used in plumbing pipes, right? Those white PVC pipes you see all over the place. So this is not safe for heating. So again, don't put any food wrap in the microwave. It's got phthalates in it, and it's got this one in it too. And then number 7 is another one. So that's the catch-all. Anything that doesn't fit into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 gets bumped into number 7. So this is where BPA lands. So baby bottles, water bottles, sports equipment, even CDs and DVDs. Avoid 3, 6, and 7, but 1, 2, and 4 aren't as bad. So moving on from plastic, let's talk about Teflon. Your non-stick pan, and it's so nice and easy and everything. But Teflon, we assumed, is inert, meaning it doesn't go anywhere, and it's on your pan. It's not expected to get in your body. But a study that was done years ago looked at umbilical cord blood from babies. So the baby is like just been born, hasn't touched anything in the universe yet, and they took blood from the umbilical cord, and they found this Teflon chemical in virtually almost all the babies. I want to say it was 90% of the babies that were born. So it is getting off your pan and it is getting into your body, and then of course to your unborn baby if you happen to be a pregnant mom. And what they found in a study is they looked at the level of this Teflon chemical in pregnant moms. And 20 years later, they looked at those moms' children. And what they found is the moms with the highest levels were 3 times as likely to have obese daughters 20 years later. So the daughters are struggling with their weight, and some portion of that had to do with what happened to the moms when they were pregnant. And interestingly, this was only true for women. It did not happen for the boy babies of these moms with the Teflon. So something to do with our female hormones, presumably. So Teflon is found in your Teflon pans. So especially when they're starting to get kind of nicked and scratched, that's really when they start to release more of this chemical. So toss them, buy new ones, use an iron skillet. They're heavy, but they are non-stick, and you get a little bit of iron from them, which is good, right? We need iron to be healthy. You can also get ceramic pans and pots, and high quality stainless steel really doesn't stick either if you get a really good quality one. But try to steer away from Teflon. So the next thing that I want to talk about is heavy metals. So mercury, lead, arsenic, aluminum, these are all things in our environment. They are found in the air that we breathe, in water. In North Carolina, we've had all kinds of problems with coal ash. And when I do heavy metal testing on people in North Carolina, very, very commonly I see high levels of thallium. And that's not something that, when I go across the country and talk to doctors in other places, nobody's talking about thallium. But we in North Carolina seem to have a lot of thallium, and that's one of the things that's in coal ash. So we know that when these metals get into our system, they take the place where a mineral should be. So they push the mineral out of the way, and they take that spot instead. And they bind to receptors on our cells, but then the wrong thing happens. So the mineral would have made the right thing happen, and now the metal comes in and makes the wrong thing happen. And it interferes with all kinds of things. It interferes with metabolism hormones. It interferes with brain function. It interferes specifically with the systems in our liver that are supposed to be getting all of these toxins out. So the systems in our liver that are supposed to be flushing the heavy metals out, but also the systems in our liver that are supposed to be flushing all these chemicals from the plastics and the other stuff out of our system. So mercury in particular, we get from fish like tuna. So limit the fish that are higher in mercury, which would be the big fish that eat all the other little fish as they move up the food chain. So tuna, mackerel, swordfish, shark, mahi. So these are all the kind of fish where you don't get a whole fish on your plate because the fish is like the size of your car. So you just get a steak. You just get a piece of it because they're really big fish. They had to eat all the little fish to get there. And you can look up, we have things in your, we have handouts we can give you that have the listing of which fish have more and less if you would be interested to learn more. And the Environmental Working Group, ewg.org, is a really great website if you want to go and look up more of this stuff. ewg.org, Environmental Working Group. So then let's talk about food. And so pesticides are sprayed on our food. And even if you wash the plant, even if you wash the fruit or whatever, the pesticide is in the plant. It's absorbed through the roots and it's in the plant. You can't wash all of it off. And what pesticides often do to us is they kill off the good bacteria that lives in our gut. So they're supposed to be killing the germs that hurt the plant, but they also kill the good bacteria in our gut when you eat those foods. And you need the good bacteria in your gut in order to properly be able to metabolize and digest food, and it makes some of your vitamins for you. So pesticide residues in our food, which we are all exposed to, even if you work so hard to eat organic, you can't get everything without pesticides. So trying to find organic food is really helpful. It is more expensive, but I heard Suzanne Summers talk one time, and I really like how she said it. What she said is, if there were two, buckets of vegetables, and this bucket over here just said, $1.99 a pound, and this one over here said sprayed with poison, 99 cents a pound. Would you save the dollar and feed your family the vegetables that had been sprayed with poison? Or would you just pay extra to get the healthy vegetables? So organic vegetables are just the vegetables that we ate when we were children. And the non-organic vegetables are the ones that are sprayed with chemicals. They're GMO, which means that their DNA has been altered. And the most common genetically modified thing, or the thing that is done to the plant, isn't to make it better for us in some way. It's to make it hardier. It's to make it withstand more pesticides so that they can spray the heck out of the plant and the plant won't die. All the weeds are goners, but this plant survives. So that means that we get an even greater load of pesticides on the non-organic foods when they're GMO. So as best as you can, organic, GMO free. If it says organic, it's going to be GMO free, but that's important. And meat is maybe even more important, because meat is fed, like cows and pigs, to fatten them up, are fed corn and soy. Cows in particular eat grass. They don't eat corn and soy naturally. So we feed them corn and soy partly because it's cheap, because in America that's what we grow because of farm subsidies and all the politics, but also because those things fatten up the cows. So if you want to fatten up a cow, you don't feed him grass, you feed him corn. And what do you think happens when we eat corn? It fattens us up too. But so they feed them soy and they feed them corn because those are things that fatten them up. But they also give them a side of antibiotics. And the antibiotics are for two reasons. One is because the cows are kept in these totally inhumane feedlots and in unsanitary conditions, so they get sick. So they have to give them antibiotics to keep them alive, to get them to market. But the other reason that they give them antibiotics is that when we put the antibiotics in their gut, it messes up their gut bacteria and it makes them gain even more weight. So when you eat the meat, you are getting the corn and the soy that the cow ate, and you're getting some of those antibiotic residues that the cow ate. And then a lot of times they pump the animals with hormones to fatten them up too, especially dairy cows. They all have an estrogen pellet behind their ear so that they produce more estrogen. So now there's more estrogen in the milk, and you drink that if you drink the cow's milk. So the health of the animal, how the animal was treated, what the animal was fed affects how that is going to affect you, and it affects your weight gain too. So there's been this debate, should you be vegan, vegetarian, should you be paleo or keto where you're eating a lot more meat? And really, it's not about should you eat meat or not, and it's so much more about what kind of meat are you eating? I mean, if it is grass-fed, grass-finished, organic, free-range, healthy animal products, that is practically not even the same food group as if you're eating the really unhealthy stuff that's been fed all the wrong things and treated with antibiotics, et cetera, et cetera. So the quality of your food is really, really important. So if we one last thing I want to say is, when we were children, we got exposed to PCBs and DDT. These are things I used to spray everywhere for pesticides and things like that. So these were banned 30 years ago. We know they're dangerous. We know they're toxic. They almost made the bald eagle go extinct. They're harmful to animals, they're harmful to humans. They've been banned, but they're still used in other parts of the world, and they last. So they are still in our bodies from 30 years ago. And these also increase our weight. So things that happened to you when you weren't even born yet, things that happened to you when you were a child, those are still things that can affect your weight. And so what ends up happening when you get chemicals in your system is most of these chemicals are fat soluble, which means that they get stored in fat. So in order to try to protect you from the effect of these chemicals, your body grows more fat cells to try to sequester the toxins in your system. And the more you store these toxins, the more they interfere with your metabolism hormones, they interfere with your blood sugar, and those things cause you to gain more weight, and now you store more toxins, and they interfere with your metabolism again. So when these things are going on, it makes it so difficult to maintain your weight. When you do lose weight, part of what you're doing is detoxifying. As you get rid of that fat out of your system, the toxins go with it too. So losing weight is one way to detoxify, but we really do need to maintain that detoxification in order to prevent the weight from just coming back again. So there are certain things that you can do to avoid toxins, and that's important. So avoid the plastics, healthy food, organic when you can, don't microwave in plastic, don't use Teflon, etc. So those things are important. And then things that you can do ongoing to help with detox or eat foods like chlorella, garlic, onions, and we have nutritional supplements that can help too. So if you feel like maybe this is a problem for you and you want to explore this a little more, please let us know. We'll be happy to talk to you about it and even design a personalized detox program if you feel that that's something that you need. And for you guys, we've sort of done that for most of you already, but sometimes this is something that we need to go back over. So our time is going to be up in just a few minutes. If anybody has a question that you want to put in the chat, I'm happy to answer any questions. The timer is telling me that we have 5 minutes, so we have a couple of minutes. In our couple of minutes, one of the things I guess that I do want to say is when you are losing weight, especially when you lose weight relatively quickly in the beginning, you release those toxins in your system. And sometimes that doesn't feel good. As the toxins are floating around through your system, sometimes it can make you feel, I don't know, more tired or more achy or more brain fog. And then you start to feel like the supplements are bothering you or the food that you're eating is bothering you or this isn't working for you. And when in reality, it may be a sign that you're starting to detoxify, and it's actually a good sign. It means that we're getting somewhere, and it will pass and you will feel better. So that's just an important thing to know as you are detoxifying. So I think I'm going to wrap things up. It's 8 o'clock. Thank you all for being on. We will send out this recording tomorrow. And I hope this was useful information. If you have more things that you want to talk to us about, please let us know. We are here to help you, and we want to make sure that you are successful. So have a good night, everybody.